What if the strongest bond on 1,000 LB sisters isn't tested by weight, surgery, or fame, but quietly breaks under the pressure of change? For years, Amy and Tammy Slaton weren't just sisters. They were survival partners. When the world laughed, they laughed together. When doctors doubted them, they defended each other. When viewers criticized every move, they stood shoulder to shoulder and took the hits as one. That connection wasn't just part of the show, it was the show. Everything else revolved around it. That's why season 8 feels different almost immediately. Not louder, not messier, just colder. From the very first moments, there's a tension you can't ignore. Conversations feel shorter. Eye contact disappears faster. The familiar rhythm between them, one talks, the other jumps in, no longer flows naturally. Instead, there are pauses. Hesitations, moments where one sister speaks and the other barely reacts. And that's when it hits longtime fans. Something fundamental has shifted. This season doesn't begin with a blow-up argument or dramatic confrontation. It begins with emotional distance, the kind that's far more dangerous than yelling. Because distance doesn't announce itself, it grows quietly, feeding on unspoken feelings, unmet expectations, and unresolved resentment. Amy and Tammy didn't suddenly stop loving each other. That's what makes this so painful to watch. They stopped understanding each other. For years, their lives moved in the same direction, even if at different speeds. Struggles overlapped, goals aligned. When one sister failed, the other was right there, failing too. There was comfort in that shared struggle. There was safety in knowing you weren't alone at the bottom. But season 8 opens in a reality neither of them prepared for. Tammy is moving forward physically, emotionally, mentally. She is more focused, more confident, and for the first time, visibly independent. She talks about her future without automatically, including Amy in every sentence. Her goals sound personal now, not shared. Amy, on the other hand, looks exhausted in a way that has nothing to do with weight. She's overwhelmed, stretched thin, torn between being a mother, a sister, and a brother. Version of herself she doesn't even recognize anymore. And as Tammy grows stronger, Amy doesn't feel inspired, she feels abandoned. That's the unspoken truth hanging over season 8. Tammy doesn't need Amy the way she used to. And Amy doesn't know who she is without being needed. This is where the emotional fracture begins. Amy spent years being the caretaker, the translator, the motivator, the emotional buffer between Tammy and the world. That role gave her purpose. It made her feel important, necessary, seen. And now, suddenly, that role is fading and no one warned her. Tammy isn't doing anything wrong. That's the hardest part. She's doing exactly what everyone wanted her to do. She's growing, healing, standing on her own. But growth changes relationships, especially ones built on dependency. And when one person evolves faster than the other, love can quietly turn into resentment. Season 8 captures that transformation with brutal honesty. You can see it in Amy's expressions when Tammy speaks confidently. You can hear it in the forced enthusiasm when Amy congratulates her. You can feel it in the way Amy's tone shifts from supportive to defensive without her even realizing it. She's proud of Tammy, but she's also hurt. And she doesn't know how to say either one out loud. That inner conflict eats away at her. Because if Tammy no longer needs her, what does that say about everything Amy sacrificed? All the years she put her own needs aside, all the moments she carried emotional weight that wasn't hers to carry. Season 8 doesn't rush to answer those questions. Instead, it lets them simmer. Every interaction between the sisters carries the weight of what isn't being said. Tammy senses the tension, but doesn't fully understand it. From her perspective, she's finally doing well, finally making progress, and yet Amy seems more distant than ever. That confusion only widens the gap. Tammy starts pulling inward. Amy starts lashing out in subtle ways. Sarcasm replaces warmth. Short comments replace long talks. And suddenly, viewers are watching two people who love each other deeply but are emotionally out of sync. This isn't a villain story. This is a tragedy of timing. And what makes it so gripping is how real it feels. Anyone who's ever outgrown a shared struggle understands this pain. When growth isn't mutual, it can feel like betrayal, even when it isn't. Season 8 puts that uncomfortable truth front and center, forcing fans to confront something rarely shown on reality TV, the cost of change. By the end of the opening stretch of the season, it's impossible to deny what's happening. Amy feels replaced. Tammy feels misunderstood. And neither knows how to bridge the gap without hurting the other. This isn't the loud collapse viewers expected. It's the quiet kind, the kind that starts with distance, grows with silence, and ends in words that can't be taken back. And the most heartbreaking part, this is only the beginning. Because in the next phase of the season, that quiet tension turns into something far more painful. When the first real crack finally surfaces, and it doesn't come from anger, it comes from indifference. And once that line is crossed, everything changes. At first, it's easy to miss the moment when everything truly starts to slip. There's no screaming match, no dramatic walkout, no slam doors. Instead, it begins with something far more unsettling: dismissal. In season 8, the first real emotional fracture between Amy and Tammy shows up in the smallest interactions. A comment rushed off, a concern minimized, a feeling ignored. These moments don't look explosive on screen, but they carry more weight than any argument ever could. Tammy talks about her plans, her routines, her progress, and for the first time, she doesn't pause to check if Amy is okay hearing it. She doesn't soften her success. She doesn't shrink herself to keep Amy comfortable. She just speaks, and Amy notices. You can see it in her face before she ever responds. That quick flicker of emotion she tries to hide. The forced nod. The half smile that doesn't reach her eyes. Amy listens, but she doesn't feel included anymore. And that's a new kind of pain for her. For years, Tammy's struggles made Amy feel useful, needed, relevant. Now, Tammy's independence makes Amy feel invisible. This is where the imbalance truly takes shape. Tammy starts responding to Amy's concerns with short answers. Not out of cruelty, but confidence. She doesn't need reassurance the way she used to. She doesn't want advice she didn't ask for. And she doesn't realize how deeply that shift cuts Amy, because Amy isn't just hearing independence. She's hearing rejection. When Amy tries to express her stress, Tammy doesn't react the way she once did. There's less empathy, less urgency, almost as if Tammy expects Amy to handle it on her own, the same way Tammy is now handling herself. But Amy isn't ready for that. She's overwhelmed by motherhood, emotional exhaustion, and the pressure of being the stable one for so long. And when she finally reaches out, hoping for the old dynamic, she finds nothing familiar on the other side. That silence hits harder than words. Amy starts to feel like her struggles don't matter anymore because they aren't as dramatic as Tammy's once were. She feels guilty for needing support when Tammy has worked so hard to get better. And that guilt quickly turns inward, twisting into resentment she doesn't know how to control. So instead of saying, "I feel left behind," Amy says things like, "You don't care anymore. You've changed. You're acting better than everyone else." And Tammy hears those words as accusations. From Tammy's perspective, she's finally doing what everyone begged her to do. She's trying to live healthier, think clearer, build a future. And suddenly, the sister who once pushed her forward now seems determined to pull her back. That realization stings. Tammy starts emotionally withdrawing to protect herself. She speaks less, shares less, keeps things surface level, and without realizing it, she creates the very distance Amy is terrified of. This is the moment when the relationship shifts from strained to fragile, because neither sister is wrong, but neither feels understood. Amy feels abandoned, Tammy feels attacked, and both feel betrayed by the change they don't know how to talk about. What makes season 8 so painful is how clearly the cameras capture this emotional misalignment. The awkward pauses, the conversations that end too soon, the way Amy fills silence with jokes while Tammy simply lets it sit there. That silence becomes its own character. It grows heavier with each episode, and viewers start to realize something unsettling. Amy and Tammy aren't fighting over what's happening now. They're fighting over everything that came before. Years of sacrifice, years of dependency, years of unspoken expectations finally demanding to be acknowledged. The love is still there, but it's buried under frustration, fear, and grief for a version of their relationship that no longer exists. And the scariest part? Neither of them knows how to grieve it without blaming the other. Because in the next part, at quiet tension, finally reaches a breaking point when a single conversation exposes how differently Amy and Tammy now see their bond, and why one of them walks away emotionally before the argument even ends. The conversation that changes everything doesn't start as a fight. It starts as something ordinary, casual, almost forgettable. That's what makes it so devastating. Amy and Tammy sit down, expecting to talk through plans like they always have. The kind of conversation they've shared hundreds of times over the years, but this time the rhythm is gone. There's no overlap in their voices, no shared jokes, just two people talking at each other instead of with each other. Amy tries to explain how overwhelmed she feels, not just tired, emotionally drained. She talks about juggling motherhood, expectations, and the pressure of always being the strong one. Her words come out messy, unfiltered, heavy with emotion she's been holding in for far too long. She isn't accusing Tammy, she's asking for understanding. But Tammy doesn't hear it that way. Tammy listens, arms crossed, expression tight. She's heard versions of this before, usually right before someone tells her she's doing something wrong. And after years of being blamed, corrected, and controlled, her guard goes up fast. Instead of leaning in, she pulls back. Tammy responds calmly, but there's a sharp edge underneath. She reminds Amy that she's worked hard to get where she is, that she can't go backward just to make someone else feel comfortable, that she deserves to live her life without constantly worrying about how it affects everyone else. And in that moment, Amy feels it. The emotional door closes. What Tammy means as self-protection, Amy experiences as rejection. Amy's voice cracks. Her frustration spills over. She says what she's been thinking but didn't want to admit. That Tammy feels different now, distant, unreachable, like she doesn't need her anymore. Tammy doesn't deny it, and that silence, that's the breaking point. Because Amy isn't afraid of Tammy changing. She's afraid of being left behind by the person she built her entire world around. Tammy finally says something she's likely been holding back for a long time. She explains that she can't keep living in a space where her growth is treated like a problem, that she spent years trapped in a body and a life she hated, and now that she's free, she refuses to apologize for it. Those words land hard. Amy hears freedom, but she also hears finality. The conversation spirals from there. Amy becomes defensive, Tammy becomes distant. Neither raises their voice, and somehow that makes it worse. There's no emotional release, no explosion to reset things. Just a cold realization settling in between them. They are no longer on the same emotional page. For the first time in the series, Tammy doesn't try to reassure Amy. She doesn't promise things will be okay. She doesn't say, we'll figure it out together. She lets the silence sit, and Amy feels abandoned in it. That moment marks a turning point in season 8. From here on out, the relationship doesn't just feel strained, it feels uncertain. Viewers start to see Amy pulling away emotionally, masking hurt with sarcasm and humor. Tammy, meanwhile, becomes more guarded, sharing less and trusting fewer people with her feelings. They're protecting themselves, but in doing so, they're pushing each other further apart. The painful irony is that both sisters want the same thing: peace, stability, a future that doesn't revolve around constant conflict, but because they've never learned how to exist independently and stay emotionally connected, every step forward feels like a loss. And that loss lingers, because in the next part, the fallout from this conversation becomes impossible to ignore when Amy's behavior starts to change in ways fans don't expect, and Tammy begins to emotionally check out altogether. This is where viewers start choosing sides, and once that happens, the divide becomes even harder to repair. After that conversation, nothing fully returns to normal, even when it looks like it has on the surface. Amy laughs again. Tammy jokes back. To a casual viewer, it might seem like they've moved past it, but longtime fans can feel the difference immediately. The warmth is thinner. The connection feels fragile, like one wrong word could shatter it all over again. And slowly, Amy begins to change. Her behavior shifts in subtle but noticeable ways. She becomes more reactive, more sarcastic, less patient. When Tammy talks about her progress or her plans, Amy's responses feel forced, sometimes even dismissive. What once sounded like encouragement now carries a sharp undertone, not openly cruel, but undeniably defensive. This is where fans start to feel uneasy. Amy has always been emotional, but in season 8, that emotion feels rawer, closer to the surface. She cries more easily, she snaps faster, and when she's called out, she immediately retreats into humor or self-blame, as if bracing for criticism she expects to come. It's not that Amy doesn't love Tammy, it's that she doesn't know how to love her in this new version of their relationship. Tammy, meanwhile, starts doing something she's never really done before. She emotionally checks out. She listens less, responds shorter, shares fewer details about her life. When tension rises, she disengages instead of arguing. To some viewers, it looks like maturity. To others, it feels cold, but the truth is more complicated. Tammy is protecting herself. For most of her life, confrontation meant humiliation, being told she was failing, being told she wasn't enough. Now that she is finally in a place where she feels stable, she refuses to put herself back in emotional chaos, even if that chaos comes from someone she loves. So when Amy lashes out, Tammy doesn't fight back. She shuts down, and that shutdown hurts Amy more than anger ever could. Amy starts interpreting Tammy's calm as indifference. She feels unheard, unseen, and instead of slowing down, her emotions escalate. She makes passive comments. She questions Tammy's intentions. She brings up old sacrifices, old struggles, old moments where she felt like she gave more than she received. The past becomes ammunition. Tammy doesn't engage with it. She won't relive it. She won't apologize for surviving. And that refusal creates a new dynamic viewers haven't seen before. A power shift. For the first time, Tammy has emotional control, and Amy doesn't know how to handle it. That imbalance shows up in group settings too. Around family members, the tension is obvious. Conversations go quiet when both sisters are in the same room. Other relatives exchange looks. No one wants to step in, but everyone senses something is wrong. and the audience senses it too. Social media begins buzzing with speculation. Fans debate who's at fault. Some accuse Amy of being jealous. Others argue Tammy has become emotionally distant and self-centered. The fandom splits, mirroring the divide on screen. But the truth is far more painful than choosing sides. This isn't about jealousy. This isn't about selfishness. This is about two people who grew in different directions and don't know how to meet in the middle anymore. As the season progresses, the emotional distance turns into physical distance. Fewer shared scenes, shorter interactions, moments that feel carefully managed rather than natural. And Amy feels it slipping through her fingers. Because in the next part, that growing distance reaches a moment of public discomfort when an offhand comment exposes just how deep the resentment has grown. And Tammy realizes for the first time that their bond may not survive this season at all. The moment that exposes everything doesn't come during a private heart-to-heart. It happens in front of other people. That's what makes it sting so deeply. The family is together, the mood is supposed to be light, and for a brief second, it almost feels like the old days. There's laughter, casual conversation, a sense of normalcy that fans have been craving. But underneath it all, the tension is still there, quiet, waiting. Then Amy makes a comment. It's quick, almost a joke. Easy to miss if you aren't paying attention. But Tammy hears it immediately. The remark is framed as humor, but it carries weight. It hints at the past, at who Tammy used to be, at how far she's come, and how uncomfortable that makes Amy feel. The room goes quiet for just a beat too long. A few people laugh awkwardly, others avoid eye contact. Tammy's expression changes, not angry, not explosive, just hurt. This is the moment Tammy realizes something she's been trying not to believe. Amy's resentment isn't just private. It's spilling out. And worse, it's happening in front of others, turning Tammy's progress into a punchline without Amy even meaning to. Tammy doesn't confront her right away. She sits with it, and that restraint says more than words ever could. For Amy, the comment slips out before she can stop it. It's the result of months of bottled emotion, exhaustion, and fear she hasn't processed. The second she says it, there's a flicker of regret in her eyes, but the damage is already done. Because Tammy finally understands, this isn't just about miscommunication, it's about unresolved bitterness. Tammy later pulls away, physically and emotionally. She doesn't join conversations the same way. She doesn't volunteer personal thoughts. She becomes polite, distant, controlled, careful. And that shift hits Amy like a wall. Amy senses the change immediately. The sister who once reacted loudly to everything now barely reacts at all. And Amy knows, deep down, that she crossed a line she didn't even realize she was approaching. But instead of apologizing, Amy does what she's always done when she feels vulnerable. She deflects, she laughs it off. She changes the subject. She tells herself it wasn't that serious. Tammy doesn't buy it. For Tammy, that comment represents years of trying to escape an identity she never chose, being defined by her worst moments, being reduced to her struggles, and hearing it come from the one person she expected to understand hurts more than any online criticism ever could. This is where Tammy emotionally detaches in a way fans have never seen. She stops seeking Amy's approval altogether, and that terrifies Amy, because as Tammy grows quieter, Amy grows louder. She tries harder to be noticed, to be validated, to be reassured that she still matters. But every attempt seems to push Tammy further away. The gap widens. Viewers start noticing something heartbreaking. Amy talking about Tammy instead of to her. Confessionals become more emotional. Her words sound confused, defensive, even guilty at times. She's wrestling with feelings she doesn't fully understand. And Tammy, she internalizes everything. She tells herself she doesn't need the drama, that she's protecting her peace. But there's pain there too. Pain she doesn't show, because showing it would mean opening the door again. That door stays closed. By the end of this stretch of the season, it's clear something irreversible has shifted. The bond that once held them together now feels fragile, strained by years of dependency and unmet expectations. And the most haunting part? Neither sister says the words that could begin to heal it. Because in the next part, that silence grows louder than ever. When a moment of absence speaks volumes, and Amy realizes too late that Tammy has already started moving on without her. After that public moment, the silence between them becomes deafening. It's not the kind of silence that's peaceful or reflective. It's loaded, heavy, full of tension that both sisters can't seem to navigate. They're in the same room, but the emotional distance makes it feel like miles apart. And Amy notices every inch of it, every glance, every pause, every breath that seems to skip acknowledgement. Amy tries to reach out. She cracks a joke, hoping for a laugh. She comments on something Tammy is doing, trying to spark the old dynamic. But the responses are short, clipped, almost automatic. Tammy has learned to protect herself by not giving much back. She's mastered emotional self-preservation. Amy feels it immediately. That small withdrawal stings far more than any argument ever could. She tries to brush it off, telling herself it's nothing, that Tammy is just distracted or tired. But the feeling lingers, it gnaws at her. And every time Tammy ignores or shortens a conversation, the gnawing grows stronger. This emotional withdrawal begins affecting their daily routines. Tasks that used to be shared now become separate. Amy handles the heavy lifting alone. Tammy focuses on her own life and her own goals. There's no confrontation, only a subtle pull away from each other that makes every shared moment strained and awkward. Amy starts to internalize it. She begins replaying past events, questioning every interaction. Was that joke really harmless? Did Tammy mean that comment? Was that look really judgmental, or is she imagining it? The more she overanalyzes, the deeper the resentment grows. Meanwhile, Tammy is unaware of the extent of Amy's emotional spiral. She doesn't realize that Amy's defensiveness is fueled by fear and hurt, not malice. From Tammy's perspective, she's simply moving forward, living her life, and staying focused on herself and her goals. She isn't trying to hurt Amy, but she is inadvertently doing exactly that. Fans watching this season begin to pick up on the tension immediately. They notice Amy's subtle defensiveness, Tammy's quiet withdrawal, and the small micro moments that suggest the sisters aren't connecting the way they used to. Social media commentary explodes with speculation. Are Amy and Tammy drifting apart? Is this the end of their bond? What really happened between them? And that speculation feeds into the dynamic. Amy begins to feel misunderstood, not just by Tammy, but by the world. She feels like the person who once carried the relationship is now being left behind, judged not only by her sister, but by everyone watching. The worst part, neither sister knows how to bridge the gap. Words fail. Attempts at conversation are clumsy, defensive, or misunderstood. Actions aren't misinterpreted. And so the emotional distance continues to grow quietly, relentlessly, and almost invisibly. This is the point in season 8 where viewers start to realize this isn't a temporary phase. The cracks are not superficial. They're deep and they're widening. Amy's fear of losing Tammy completely becomes palpable. She feels like she's chasing a sister who is slowly slipping out of reach, and every effort to catch her only seems to push Tammy further away. And in the next part, that growing separation hits its first dramatic milestone, when a private moment exposes how far apart they truly are. And Amy realizes that Tammy may have already started emotionally moving on without her. That private moment comes quietly, almost invisibly, but it hits harder than any public argument ever could. Amy notices it first while they're at home, filming a scene meant to capture a typical day. Tammy is focused on her own routine, preparing a meal, checking schedules, managing her personal goals, and she doesn't involve Amy the way she used to. She doesn't ask for input, she doesn't wait for feedback, and she doesn't even glance up as if Amy's presence matters in that moment. Amy freezes. She feels an almost physical pang in her chest. That small, seemingly ordinary act, not including her sister, confirms what she's been fearing for weeks. Tammy is no longer leaning on her. Tammy is no longer relying on her. Tammy is moving forward independently, and Amy isn't part of that future in the same way. She tries to engage. She makes a casual comment, something lighthearted meant to bridge the distance. Tammy responds, but her tone is clipped, her attention divided. She doesn't seem offended or angry, just detached. The warmth that used to flow naturally between them is gone, and Amy knows it. She feels it, and it terrifies her. Amy's reaction is immediate, but subtle. She withdraws, not dramatically, but internally. Her mind races with thoughts she can't fully voice. Does Tammy even care about me anymore? Have I lost my place in her life? Is our bond disappearing right in front of me? Tammy notices Amy's quietness, but instead of addressing it, she continues with her own focus. She's learned over the years that conflict often escalates when she engages, so she keeps her distance. She's protecting her emotional space, not realizing that her silence is amplifying Amy's pain. In that moment, Amy begins a shift that fans start to see in every scene afterward. She becomes more defensive, more sensitive, more reactive. The fear of losing Tammy completely overtakes her ability to communicate calmly. Every comment Tammy makes, even harmless ones, starts to feel like judgment. Every glance, even fleeting, feels like criticism, and the emotional misalignment deepens. Tammy is calm, controlled, focused on herself. Amy is anxious, defensive, desperate to regain connection. They're speaking different emotional languages, and neither knows how to translate the other's words or actions. Viewers can feel the tension radiating from the screen. This is the point in the season where speculation explodes online. Fans debate, is Amy jealous? Is Tammy being cold? Are they truly drifting apart? But the truth is far more complex. It's not about blame. It's about two people growing in different directions and struggling to maintain a bond that once felt unbreakable. And in the next part, that private distance turns public, creating a moment so tense that everyone around them, family, friends, even the cameras, feels the rift widen. It's the first instance where the gap isn't just emotional, but visibly undeniable. The private tension finally spills into public view during a family gathering, and it's impossible to ignore. Everyone is sitting around, talking, laughing, and for a brief moment, it seems like the old harmony has returned. But Amy and Tammy sit across from each other, and their body language tells a very different story. Tammy keeps her movements controlled, her gaze distant at times, focused on what she's doing rather than the conversation. Amy, on the other hand, fidgets, trying to engage, trying to spark the old connection, but every attempt is met with a short, neutral response. Then it happens. A seemingly small comment from Amy, meant to be lighthearted or playful, lands differently than she expects. It references something in Tammy's past, a memory that once would have drawn laughter or a shared joke. Instead, Tammy's expression tightens. She doesn't laugh. She doesn't respond warmly. She pauses, and the room grows quiet for a split second that feels much longer than it is. That brief silence says more than words ever could. Amy feels the weight of it instantly. She realizes that Tammy is no longer just emotionally distant. She is consciously holding back, protecting herself from feelings she doesn't want to relive. That's when Amy understands the rift isn't temporary. This isn't a fleeting argument. Something fundamental has shifted. Amy tries to cover it up with humor, as she often does. She makes another joke, forces a smile, laughs too loudly. But the effort feels hollow. Tammy doesn't respond the way she used to. The warmth, the understanding, the connection, it's gone. Viewers watching this moment feel the tension almost physically. The cameras capture every glance, every pause, every subtle facial expression that reveals the silent struggle. Social media buzzes immediately. Fans comment on the awkwardness, the distance, the unspoken resentment. Some take Amy's side, others Tammy's, but nearly everyone senses the heartbreak beneath the surface. Amy, meanwhile, begins internalizing the moment. She replays it over and over in her mind. She wonders if she overstepped, if she said the wrong thing, or if Tammy has truly begun moving on without her. That mental loop increases her anxiety, fuels defensiveness, and primes her for overreactions in the coming episodes. Tammy's calm, controlled detachment frustrates Amy more than any confrontation ever could. She wants an apology, an acknowledgement, a reaffirmation of their bond, but Tammy gives none. Instead, Tammy continues her day as though nothing has happened, silently reinforcing the emotional distance that's now impossible to ignore. And that's when the fans realize something terrifying. Season 8 isn't just about weight loss or personal goals anymore. It's about a relationship in jeopardy, slowly unraveling in real time. The cameras aren't just documenting events. They're capturing the disintegration of a bond that once seemed unbreakable. In the next part, the consequences of this public tension escalate. Amy's behavior begins to shift noticeably, creating conflict not just with Tammy, but with everyone around her, and the emotional fallout becomes even more visible and unavoidable. After that public moment, Amy begins to change in ways fans can't help but notice. Her defensiveness escalates. Every interaction with Tammy feels like a minefield. Amy laughs more loudly than necessary, makes sarcastic remarks, and overcompensates in attempts to regain connection. But the more she tries, the more apparent it becomes that something has shifted irreversibly. Tammy no longer reacts the way she used to, leaving Amy's efforts feeling hollow. Even minor disagreements now spiral quickly. A small misunderstanding about plans or responsibilities can turn into an emotional struggle that lingers for hours. Amy internalizes these moments, replaying them repeatedly, trying to decode what went wrong. She begins to question not just Tammy's feelings, but her own place in the sisterly bond. Tammy, on the other hand, maintains a careful distance. She responds only when necessary, keeps her emotions controlled, and avoids escalating tension. To an outsider, she seems composed, but Amy interprets her restraint as coldness, indifference, even rejection. The emotional misalignment between them deepens. This shift begins affecting interactions with the rest of the family. Conversations grow tense. Other relatives notice the subtle undercurrents, exchange worried glances, and often choose silence over engagement. Amy's frustrations become more visible in confessionals, where she alternates between blaming herself, questioning Tammy's intentions, and expressing fear of losing their connection entirely. As the episodes progress, Amy begins to act out in subtle ways. She challenges Tammy's decisions, questions her choices, and brings up past sacrifices, old moments that she once accepted without complaint. These reminders, meant to assert her value in the relationship, often backfire, reinforcing Tammy's emotional withdrawal. Tammy continues to protect her boundaries, but the tension is palpable. The audience begins to feel the split in real time. Amy chasing connection, Tammy quietly pulling away. Their interactions are charged with unspoken words, glances loaded with meaning, and pauses that speak louder than any argument could. This is the stage where the audience starts picking sides. Fans debate who is in the wrong, who truly cares. But the truth is deeper and more heartbreaking. This is a story of two people growing in different directions, struggling to maintain a bond built on dependency, loyalty, and years of shared struggle. By the end of this arc, Amy is visibly struggling with acceptance. She feels trapped between love, resentment, and fear. Tammy's calm detachment, intended as self-preservation, only magnifies Amy's anxiety. Every attempt at reconciliation seems to fail, and the emotional distance continues to grow, making reconciliation feel almost impossible. In the next part, that tension reaches a critical breaking point. A moment of confrontation, long awaited, by viewers finally arrives, and it changes the dynamic between them forever. The long-awaited confrontation finally arrives, and it hits harder than anyone could have predicted. It begins subtly, a small disagreement over something mundane, almost trivial. Maybe it's about household responsibilities, a miscommunication, about schedules, or a casual remark that was taken the wrong way. But in the context of weeks of tension and growing emotional distance, that minor spark is enough to ignite a much larger emotional reaction. Amy is the first to react. Her frustration, already simmering under the surface, boils over. She voices her feelings loudly, emotionally, almost desperately, accusing Tammy of being distant, indifferent, and unappreciative. She brings up old sacrifices, moments where she felt she carried the relationship on her shoulders, and how Tammy's growing independence makes her feel left behind. Tammy listens, initially calm. She doesn't interrupt, doesn't retaliate. But as Amy's words continue, her own emotions surface. For years, she's been painted as the dependent one, the problem in the eyes of the world. And now, hearing Amy's accusations, even if unintentional, she feels the sting of judgment and misunderstanding. The tension escalates, voices rise, emotions flare. Confessionals capture Amy's tears, Tammy's quiet frustration, and the weight of years of unspoken emotions finally coming to the surface. Fans watching feel every pang, every hesitation, every look that says more than words ever could. This confrontation is different from previous arguments because neither sister wants to win. They both just want understanding, but their inability to communicate effectively makes resolution impossible. Amy's emotional intensity clashes with Tammy's controlled restraint, creating a dynamic where neither can feel fully heard or validated. Outside family members notice immediately. The atmosphere is tense, the room feels smaller. Every glance, every pause, every sigh communicates volumes. The cameras catch it all. Amy's desperation, Tammy's guarded expressions, the unspoken fear that this fight might mark a turning point in their bond. By the end of this confrontation, both sisters are emotionally exhausted. Amy feels rejected, overwhelmed, and fearful of losing Tammy completely. Tammy feels misunderstood, pressured, and frustrated that her independence is being misinterpreted as coldness or neglect. Fans watching the season immediately react online. Comment sections explode with speculation and divided opinions. Some viewers sympathize with Amy's emotional turmoil, while others defend Tammy's right to grow and set boundaries. The conversation mirrors the conflict on screen, making the tension feel even more palpable. This confrontation marks the first visible fracture that cannot be ignored. The bond that once seemed unbreakable is now strained to the limit. And while both sisters retreat afterward, the emotional aftermath lingers, coloring every interaction in the episodes that follow. In the next part, the consequences of this fight ripple through their daily lives, creating moments of awkwardness, miscommunication, and heartache that viewers cannot look away from. After that confrontation, the tension doesn't simply disappear. It lingers like a shadow over every interaction. Amy begins to carry the fight with her, even when the cameras aren't rolling. Small gestures from Tammy, a quiet comment, a distracted glance, or simply focusing on herself, now feel loaded with meaning. Amy interprets everything through the lens of that confrontation, assuming judgment, indifference, or rejection, even where none exists. This constant vigilance changes her behavior in noticeable ways. She becomes more reactive, more defensive, and increasingly impatient. Even minor disagreements escalate quickly. A simple miscommunication about household chores or schedules can trigger emotional outbursts, tearful confessions, or sarcastic remarks. Amy feels caught between wanting connection and fearing that every attempt to reach Tammy will push her further away. Tammy, meanwhile, continues her pattern of emotional self-preservation. She maintains a calm exterior, speaks minimally when tensions rise, and avoids engaging in arguments that feel unproductive. To some viewers, this appears like maturity, but to Amy, it feels like coldness. The emotional gap widens. Family interactions become noticeably strained. Moments that were once filled with warmth now feel tense. Shared meals, casual conversations, or family activities are marked by subtle awkwardness. Relatives exchange worried glances, sensing the growing divide but unsure how to intervene. The cameras capture every nuance: Amy's frustration, Tammy's quiet distance, the unspoken resentment that has taken root. Amy also begins reflecting on the past more than ever. She revisits old moments of sacrifice, long-forgotten support, and times when she felt she carried Tammy emotionally. These reflections become a source of both pride and frustration, as she struggles to reconcile her loyalty with the feeling that Tammy no longer needs her in the same way. The audience begins noticing changes in Amy's confessionals. Her words are tinged with sadness, defensiveness, and confusion. She oscillates between blaming herself, questioning Tammy, and expressing fear of losing their bond entirely. The emotional roller coaster makes her relatable to fans, while also heightening tension in the narrative. Tammy, on the other hand, seems increasingly aware of the growing emotional distance, but chooses to prioritize her own well-being. She continues to focus on her personal goals, health, and routines, often appearing detached during shared moments. This detachment, though protective for her, intensifies Amy's feelings of abandonment. By this point in Season 8, it's clear to viewers that the sisters are no longer operating in sync emotionally. Every interaction, no matter how small, carries weight. Their relationship, once uncheckable, is now fragile, defined as much by silence as by spoken words. In the next part, that fragile dynamic reaches a tipping point when a seemingly ordinary event triggers an emotional meltdown, forcing both sisters to confront the depth of their disconnect in a way that changes their relationship forever. The tipping point comes from something ordinary, a moment so small it seems trivial to an outsider, but to Amy and Tammy, it becomes explosive. It happens during a routine day at home. Tammy is focused on a personal task, maybe organizing her schedule, prepping for an appointment, or checking on her own health goals. Amy, still carrying the weight of the recent confrontation and the growing emotional distance, notices Tammy's lack of attention toward her. She interprets Tammy's focus as indifference. Every glance away, every distracted sigh, every moment spent elsewhere feels like a rejection. Amy tries to mask her feelings at first, joking lightly or making casual remarks, but the humor feels forced. Tammy responds briefly, polite but neutral, unaware of how deeply Amy is analyzing each word and action. The tension escalates silently, building an emotional pressure that has nowhere to go. Finally, Amy can't hold it in anymore. She voices her feelings in a surge of frustration, tearful, raw, and emotional. She expresses fear of being left behind, resentment toward Tammy's independence, and sorrow for the loss of the closeness they once shared. Her words tumble out, unfiltered, as if letting them spill will somehow bridge the gap. Tammy listens, absorbing each word with her signature calm. But this time, she responds with honesty rather than distance. She acknowledges Amy's emotions, but she also states her own truth, that she cannot compromise her personal growth or autonomy to make Amy feel comfortable. She explains that years of dependency, struggle, and judgment have taught her to protect her peace. The combination of Amy's emotional overflow and Tammy's firm boundaries triggers a moment of raw confrontation. The camera captures Amy's confusion, hurt, and fleeting anger, alongside Tammy's resolve and controlled demeanor. Viewers can feel the tension radiating from the screen, as if the room itself is holding its breath. For the first time in the season, the sisters are fully aware of the emotional chasm between them. Amy sees Tammy as moving forward without her, and Tammy sees Amy clinging to a past dynamic that no longer exists. Neither sister is wrong, but neither feels fully understood. That day marks a critical milestone in their relationship. It's no longer subtle tension or quiet withdrawal. It's a clear acknowledgement that their bond has shifted dramatically. Fans watching are struck by the raw honesty, the vulnerability, and the heartbreak of two people who love each other deeply, but are navigating completely different emotional realities. By the end of this episode, Amy is left grappling with a sense of loss and fear, while Tammy feels a mix of guilt, resolve, and the necessity of protecting her independence. The emotional fallout will ripple through the rest of the season, influencing every decision, interaction, and shared moment between them. In the next part, the audience will witness the first long-term consequences of this meltdown, how daily life becomes filled with subtle conflicts, miscommunication, and moments that test the sisters' patience and love like never before. After that emotional meltdown, the consequences begin to weave into every aspect of their daily lives. Even the simplest interactions feel loaded. The shared meal becomes tense. Every comment, every glance, every gesture carries hidden meaning. Amy is hyper-aware of Tammy's behavior, interpreting even neutral actions as judgment or rejection. Tammy, meanwhile, continues to guard her emotional space, speaking only when necessary and keeping her reactions measured. Amy's anxiety escalates. She begins overanalyzing Tammy's tone, facial expressions, and body language. Every misstep feels magnified. Every pause becomes evidence that their bond is slipping further away. She attempts to bridge the gap with humor, sarcasm, or small acts of attention. But these gestures are either ignored or misinterpreted by Tammy. Each failed attempt chips away at Amy's confidence and deepens her sense of isolation. Tammy, for her part, maintains her boundaries. But this also means she withdraws from activities or conversations that used to bring them together. She focuses on her goals, health, and personal growth, which Amy perceives as emotional absence. The dynamic becomes cyclical. Amy reaches out, Tammy protects herself, and Amy feels rejected again. Family interactions become increasingly awkward. Relatives notice the subtle tension, the short replies, the careful movements, and the weight of unspoken words. They attempt to mediate or lighten the mood, but the sisters' unresolved emotions make it difficult. The cameras capture every micro-expression, Amy's frustration, Tammy's guarded composure, the silent energy that fills the room. Amy begins to reflect on the past more heavily. Memories of shared struggles, sacrifices, and loyalty now fuel both pride and frustration. She wonders if all she did for Tammy over the years is being undervalued or overlooked. This internal conflict spills into confessionals where Amy oscillates between guilt, anger, sadness, and fear of losing their bond completely. Tammy's focus on self-preservation also leads to moments of emotional isolation. She may smile, joke lightly, or participate in family events, but her engagement lacks the depth it once had. This detachment, though protective, amplifies Amy's perception that she is being left behind, creating an emotional echo that resonates throughout the season. The audience begins to sense that the sisters are on divergent paths. Amy chases connection. Tammy protects herself. This divergence, subtle at first, now becomes unmistakable, shaping every shared moment, conversation, and decision. By the end of this phase, it's clear that Season 8 isn't just documenting health or personal progress. It's documenting the unraveling of a relationship built on years of dependency, loyalty, and shared hardship. Fans are invested not just in the drama, but in the raw emotional truth of two sisters struggling to understand each other while navigating their own growth. In the next part, that tension reaches a near breaking point, where a single miscommunication threatens to undo the progress, bringing both sisters to the brink of confrontation once again. The tension reaches a near breaking point during a seemingly ordinary miscommunication, but the emotional stakes are anything but ordinary. It starts with something small, perhaps a question about plans, a comment about a task, or a reminder about responsibilities. To anyone else, it would be a minor misunderstanding. But for Amy and Tammy, every word carries the weight of weeks, even months of unspoken feelings, frustration, and unresolved resentment. Amy hears Tammy's response and interprets it immediately as dismissive. Her mind races, replaying past incidents, imagining slights, and questioning her sister's intentions. She feels invisible, undervalued, and left behind, and those feelings erupt in a flood of emotion. Her voice cracks as she expresses frustration, hurt, and fear, spilling out all the thoughts she's been holding in for weeks. Tammy listens, composed but firm. She explains her perspective, emphasizing that her focus on independence, personal growth, and self-care isn't intended to hurt Amy. She stresses that she values their bond, but can no longer compromise her well-being or progress to ease Amy's discomfort. Her calm, rational tone contrasts sharply with Amy's emotional intensity, creating a friction that feels almost tangible. The clash of emotional styles, Amy's vulnerability and need for validation versus Tammy's controlled detachment and self-protection, turns the room into a pressure cooker. Neither sister wants to escalate into anger, yet the weight of unexpressed emotions makes calm impossible. Every word, pause, and gesture is charged with meaning. Family members notice immediately. Conversations stop. Eyes widen. The energy becomes almost unbearable. The cameras capture every detail. Amy's tremors of frustration, Tammy's tight-lipped control, and the quiet tension that fills the space between them. Viewers feel like they're witnessing a breaking point, a moment where a single misstep could irreparably change the sisters' relationship. This confrontation doesn't resolve easily. Amy's attempts to connect are met with Tammy's protective calm. Tammy's boundaries, while healthy, amplify Amy's sense of rejection. Both feel misunderstood. Both feel hurt. Both feel the fear of losing each other entirely. Fans watching the season react immediately. Social media buzzes with speculation, divided opinions, and heartfelt comments about the sisters' struggles. The emotional engagement is intense because the situation is relatable. Two people deeply connected but struggling to navigate growth, independence, and changing dynamics. By the end of this pivotal moment, it's clear to everyone, Amy and Tammy's bond is at a critical juncture. The season has moved beyond minor disputes and light drama. It's now about redefining a relationship, facing emotional truths, and confronting the difficult reality of change. In the next part, Viewers will witness the aftermath of this confrontation, how the sisters navigate the following days, the subtle shifts in their interactions, and the emotional journey that could either heal or further fracture their connection. The aftermath of that confrontation sets the tone for the rest of season 8, and it's both heartbreaking and revealing. Amy wakes up the next day carrying a mix of guilt, frustration, and fear. Every small action by Tammy feels scrutinized through a lens of anxiety. Amy wants to apologize, to bridge the gap, to hear reassurance that their bond is still intact, but she's unsure how to do it without triggering another conflict. Her attempts are hesitant, awkward, and sometimes misread by Tammy, which only reinforces her fear of rejection. Tammy, on the other hand, focuses on her own routine and personal growth. She approaches each interaction with care, mindful of boundaries, and intent on maintaining her progress. But while she protects herself emotionally, she also recognizes the pain in Amy. She struggles internally with wanting to offer support without sacrificing her autonomy, creating a delicate balance that's difficult to navigate. The tension lingers in every shared moment: meals, chores, filming sessions, and family gatherings carry subtle undercurrents of unresolved emotion. Amy's defensiveness and Tammy's calm detachment create a push and pull dynamic. Amy reaches out, Tammy maintains space, and both sisters are left feeling partially understood, yet emotionally distant. Viewers notice the change immediately. The energy on screen is different from previous seasons. Confessionals reveal Amy's emotional roller coaster, guilt, fear, love, frustration, and Tammy's quiet introspection, showing the inner conflict of protecting her independence while staying connected. Social media explodes with discussions, debates, and theories about how the sisters will navigate the rest of the season. Despite the distance, moments of connection still appear. Shared laughter, brief conversations, and small gestures hint at the bond that once held them together. These fleeting glimpses of closeness create tension for the audience, reminding viewers that while the relationship is strained, love still exists. It's just complicated by growth, fear, and miscommunication. Season 8, at its core, becomes a story of evolution and adaptation. It's about two sisters learning to coexist with different emotional needs and life paths. Amy must come to terms with her feelings of inadequacy and the fear of being left behind, while Tammy must balance self-preservation with the love and loyalty she still feels for her sister. By the end of the season, the audience witnesses a relationship transformed. The bond is no longer the simple, unshakable connection of earlier seasons. It is now nuanced, layered, and tested by change. Fans are left reflecting on the complexity of family, love, and personal growth, realizing that sometimes love isn't enough to maintain the same relationship forever. Season 8 closes with a bittersweet acknowledgement. Amy and Tammy still care for each other deeply, but they must navigate a new dynamic, one that requires patience, understanding, and acceptance of change. And that is what makes this season both devastating and compelling, offering a raw, honest look at how evolving as individuals can challenge even the strongest family bonds. This is the story of Season 8, a story of love, growth, conflict, and the painful reality of change. It's the season that proves even the strongest bonds can be tested, and sometimes they must be redefined rather than repaired.